Well, I think it's finally time to be honest. It's not working out. And that has to do with Meta and their big push for the metaverse, maybe just the metaverse in general. This is something I've been following for a while now after they announced that they were changing their name from Facebook to Meta, and they showed off an interesting looking world that they were envisioning. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about this because we have been seeing it come up more and more often, and even most recently with Phil Spencer at the Wall Street Journal conference that he did. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button. If you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe down below. First of all, let's take a quick look at the 1 year snapshot for, well, Meta now. And there, you can see their overall value of the company has, just plummeted down almost 70% over the last year. It used to be valued, we were talking like $350 nearly per share. Now it's down to 99. It's under $100. It had another recent dip. And overall, they've gone from a market cap of, I think it was like almost $900 billion, and they're down to $266 billion. Think about how much money was lost there in this last year. And a lot of this is because of their big push towards the metaverse that is certainly not helping them when it comes to actually making money. In fact, they are consistently losing money now with a lot of their earnings. And their overall monthly active users has either plateaued or even fallen, which is not at all normal for Facebook. They tend to actually continue to onboard more and more users for their platform. But with this metaverse push, it seems like people are becoming very shaky when it comes to their vision and if this will actually become a thing. And I have to agree, I don't think that Meta is going about this in the correct way. Like, for example here, the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, is betting on work in the metaverse. And I think that was pretty obvious with their most recent headset that they showed off. It's $1,500, hour and a half battery life, and it was mostly geared towards collaborating while at home, working remote, but still trying to essentially simulate you being in the workplace with some of your other coworkers and be able to do things in a virtual space even that you can't do in person, like just snap your finger and a whiteboard appears next to you and you draw on it and things like that. So in a perfect world, in a perfect setting, that sounds cool, right? But we are so far from that kind of reality. It's actually hard to wrap your head around, since a lot of things have to go right for Meta right now to get to that point that they are envisioning. The big thing I think we're running into right now with this, no one really knows how to define the metaverse. And there are a lot of definitions for it that people are throwing around. You can go on like Wikipedia, where there's a collaboration of definitions that continues to change, by the way, because people keep editing the meaning of it. But like, we've gone from a virtual lived in world to a collection of worlds as one big universe. And if you consider the idea that it's supposed to be about the social aspect, then technically we've had metaverses for a long time now. We're talking decades, maybe. Think about a game like Second Life that really got away from just being a game and became more of just a world where you would even have commerce, and it spilled out even into the physical world when there were real court cases that happened based on conflicts in that game. There was one about land seizure in the game because people were taking land and there was a dispute over it, and there's a whole thing. There were even class action lawsuits, I believe, that came out of that game. So if you consider Second Life, that would be a metaverse technically. You could consider World of Warcraft, especially in its heyday, with the amount of social interaction that was going on there. And really, at some points, people just, that was their world. You consider that a metaverse? Could you consider right now Final Fantasy 14 as a metaverse? Technically, yes. I guess the only difference here is if you go by the definition that it's a collection of all different worlds under one universe, and you can't technically go to the virtual Walmart in Final Fantasy 14, then it's not. But based on the idea of it being a social platform that you interact with consistently, I mean, yeah, it's a metaverse. Now, of course, Meta trying to build out the metaverse means that they have to have some sort of application or world that you would live in. And apparently that's their Horizon worlds, which is something that's come under fire and a lot of criticism, especially recently, which we'll get to in a second with their latest presentation. But there are words going around through memos that even people within Meta aren't really using it. And it's interesting because they have like Horizon Worlds and they have like Horizon Workplace that's supposed to be that idea that you get together in an office and you can work together like normal while being at your desk. But when the people who are working within Meta aren't using it, I mean, if there's no confidence there from the people who should be willing to use it and enjoy it and push it, how do you expect everyone else to get on board with it? And one thing that came up had to do with, and this is serious, legs for your avatars. If you remember, this was part of that presentation where they showed off the new headset, and it was like, look, we have legs now. It's like this. It's like Fire Emblem Awakening kind of stuff here, but they did this entire presentation. They show legs off, and people didn't believe it. Why? Because it looked a little too good when it came to the animation for the different legs on the characters in the presentation. And in fact, it turns out they did use motion capture to essentially simulate the smoothness of the animation. Basically, it's not something that's being done in real time in Horizon Worlds or workplaces. And again, you hear that and you're like, okay, what's going on here? Because they're not exactly representing this correctly. It just kind of screams desperation when you have to have these simulated animations for legs in your flagship program or application that's going to tie the metaverse together there, especially when you see Phil Spencer with comments like these at that Wall Street Journal event where he describes the metaverse as a poorly built video game. And when you see what Horizon Worlds look like, which is just a screenshot, for example, I mean, is it just me or does PlayStation Home look better than this? Yeah, but Phil Spencer had, I think, a good point, and it's what I've been thinking about for a while with this. He said video game creators have an amazing ability to build compelling worlds that we want to go spend time in. For me, building a metaverse that looks like a meeting room, I just find that's not where I want to spend most of my time. And I think this lines up with the direction of Microsoft currently and why Metaverse has been brought up in that Activision Blizzard deal. You have to get people to want to go to the Metaverse. If you say, hey, you can go to a virtual world where you work, do you really care to go to it then? It's like, oh, great, I have to put this headset on and go to work for 8 hours today. Oh boy. Wouldn't you rather be like, oh, cool, I can put on this headset and all of a sudden I'm in this incredible fantasy world, or I'm visiting this really cool landmark that I may never be able to go to in person, like, I don't know, Antarctica or the top of Mount Everest or something like that. And I can just explore this area. You have to get people excited to go, not have to go. You want to go, not have to go. I mean, we even have John Carmack, who is working to engineer VR at Oculus or Meta, kind of disagreeing with some of the approaches that are happening right now with the metaverse from Meta. And some of that had to do with the idea that we are pushing towards more workplace stuff, but also the hardware. And I can absolutely agree with John Carmack on this, because it's getting more expensive for virtual reality, which is already hard to sell people on it as it is, unless they can try it. But in that case, you also have to spend money to try it, so more than likely people will just kind of walk on past it. But he did say here, with the metaverse, it'll work just fine on the Quest 2, which the Quest 2 is a good VR headset. I know it's gone up in price, and it's harder to justify it when it gets $100 more expensive, like overnight. But when it first came out, I mean, it being all in one, no cables, and some of the cool stuff you can do, like Resident Evil 4 or Beat Saber, and I think even Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is going to it. I'm talking about games, obviously, because that's kind of what I got the headset to experience. But still, as he says here, having those bigger features like facial recognition, so you can change how your avatar looks depending on your emotions and stuff, isn't central to the experience, and it's going to be significantly more expensive. So we're heading in the direction of $2,000 VR headsets. I think we should be going the opposite direction and working towards the $100 headset, or even if you can get less than that. If we get to a position where it's just like sunglasses you put on, and sure, that's probably 10, 15, 20 years in the future, but that's kind of the entire plan of this. Is it's not something that's going to happen right now. We're still trying to get this entire metaverse idea off the ground. And I guess that brings us back to the ultimate question. Does the metaverse have to exist? Do we need to get to a position like Ready Player One? Are people asking for it? Or do we have a company like Meta telling us that it should exist? And that's kind of my big hang up here as well. I think VR, as I mentioned, it's a cool experience. It's interesting. There are some fun applications on there, but is that the direction of your overall life and what you would have as your lived in world? Not something physical, but something that's completely virtual. It's hard to say. I don't know if I would get to a position where I would just want to go to work with a VR headset on for 8 to 10 hours a day or something, but I'm also not someone who's spent entire days in World of Warcraft at a time. So, I mean, maybe there are people out there who would like to have this ability to go anywhere and be anyone you want in a world where it'll even track your items and all of these different things. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. The entire idea of the metaverse, Meta going all in on it, and not exactly reaping the rewards at this time, tanking nearly $700 billion in value. Do you think it was a mistake for them? Because at this point, it's kind of hard to argue that it wasn't. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.